I never thought my childhood was strange. Every family has their own rules, their own traditions. Some parents don't allow sweets before dinner. Some don't let their kids watch TV after 9. But in our house, there was one rule that was heavier, darker, and far more terrifying than any of those. Never open the basement door after midnight. My father used to say it with such seriousness that even as a child I understood it wasn't a joke. He had this deep, commanding voice that could silence a room, and whenever he repeated the rule, the entire house seemed to grow colder. I remember one night, when I was about 7, I asked him why. I was brushing my teeth, standing on a little wooden stool so I could reach the sink. He stood behind me, his reflection towering over mine in the mirror. I tried to laugh it off, to sound casual, like any curious kid would. But what happens if I do? I asked, spitting toothpaste foam into the sink. He didn't smile. Not even a twitch of amusement crossed his face. His expression turned so rigid that it scared me more than any ghost story could. He crouched down, leveled his eyes with mine, and whispered, "Asterisk, you don't want to know, son. Asterisk." That was the end of the conversation. He never explained. From that night on, the rule was burned into my memory. I never dared to break it. Our house stood on the edge of a small, sleepy town, surrounded by trees that whispered when the wind blew. It was old, built by my grandfather decades ago. People in the neighborhood called him the eccentric carpenter. Some said he was brilliant, others muttered that he was disturbed. He built things, strange furniture, wooden carvings with faces that looked almost alive, and, of course, this house. The basement was his domain. No one ever went down there except him and, later, my father. As a kid, I'd sometimes sneak to the top of the basement stairs, trying to peek in when the door creaked open. I'd catch glimpses, shelves of old jars, rusty tools, and shadows that seemed to move even when nothing was there. The smell was unforgettable, damp earth, mold, and something sharp and metallic that made the air feel heavy in my lungs. My grandfather died when I was 10, and after that, the basement became even more forbidden. My dad inherited both the house and the rule. He made sure I never even touched the doorknob at night. For years, I tried to convince myself it was just one of those strange family traditions, an old superstition carried from one generation to another. But no matter how much I rationalized it, there was always something in my father's eyes, a flicker of fear he couldn't hide, that told me there was more. As I grew older, I left for college and stayed away most of the time. Life kept me busy, and I rarely thought about the basement. But then Mom passed away. She had always been the warm, grounding force in the house. Without her, my father grew quieter, more rigid. I felt guilty leaving him alone, so I came back to stay for a while. It felt strange moving back into my childhood room. The same peeling wallpaper, the same creaky bed frame, the same window that looked out into the endless black forest behind our house. Only now, everything felt heavier, as though the house itself had aged and was groaning under the weight of secrets I still didn't understand. That's when the rule came back into my life. On my very first night back, I woke up at midnight. Not because of a nightmare or because I couldn't sleep, but because of a sound. A faint, steady knocking. At first, I thought I had dreamed it. I sat up in bed, listening. The house was quiet, the kind of silence that presses against your ears. Then it came again, knock, knock, slow, rhythmic. It was coming from downstairs. I held my breath, straining to hear. The knocks were deliberate, almost patient, as if whoever or whatever was making them knew exactly what they were doing. My chest tightened, and I could feel my heartbeat echoing in my ears. The realization hit me like ice water. The sound was coming from the basement door. I wanted to tell myself it was just the house settling, or maybe the old pipes. But deep down, I knew the difference. I had grown up in this house. I knew its noises, its sighs, its creaks. This wasn't one of them. This was different. Then I heard movement. Floorboards creaked softly in the hallway. My father. He was awake. I listened as his heavy footsteps descended the stairs, each step groaning under his weight. The knocking stopped instantly, as if silenced by his presence. I sat there frozen, staring at my bedroom door, waiting for something, anything, to happen. But nothing did. Eventually, I heard him climb back upstairs and return to his room. The next morning, over breakfast, I tried to act casual. "Did you hear anything last night?" I asked, poking at my eggs with my fork. His eyes flicked up to mine, sharp and quick, before returning to his plate. "No," he said flatly. Then he changed the subject, asking about my classes, my work. He didn't fool me. His voice was too tight, his answer too quick. He had heard it, and he was afraid. That was the moment I realized two things. 1. The knocking wasn't in my head. 2. Whatever was behind that basement door, my father was terrified of it. And that terrified me even more. The second night, I told myself I was ready. I wasn't going to let the house get inside my head again. I lay in bed with the blanket pulled to my chin, staring at the ceiling, every nerve on edge. My phone read 11:58. The ticking of the old wall clock in the hallway sounded like a hammer inside my skull. When midnight came, the house seemed to hold its breath. The air turned heavier, colder, and then it started again. Knock, knock, knock. The same slow, deliberate rhythm as before. But this time, it wasn't just sound. It felt like the vibrations traveled up through the floorboards into my chest. My heart skipped. My body told me to stay still, not to move an inch, like prey hiding from a predator. But my mind was racing. What if it was a person? What if someone had been living down there all these years? I swallowed hard, forcing myself to breathe quietly. That's when I heard it. Between the knocks, softer than a whisper, almost like the air itself forming words. Daniel. My blood froze. It wasn't just a noise. It knew my name. For a moment, I thought I'd lost my mind. I gripped the sheets so tightly my knuckles turned white. Childhood memories flooded back. Times I swore I'd heard scratching under the floorboards. Times when my mom pulled me away from the basement door after dark, her face pale, lips pressed into a thin line. I remembered the way she always kept the radio on at night, as if trying to drown out sounds she refused to acknowledge. I wanted to scream for my father, but no sound came out. My throat was locked shut, my tongue heavy as stone. Then I heard footsteps. My father's door creaked open, and the slow, steady thud of his boots echoed down the hallway. He wasn't rushing, wasn't surprised. He walked like a man fulfilling a grim duty. The knocking stopped the moment he reached the stairs. But this time, the silence wasn't complete. There was a faint scratching, like nails dragging across wood. And then, a low, guttural growl, so deep it rattled in my bones. It wasn't human. It couldn't be. My father paused at the bottom step. I could hear him breathing heavily, his breath sharp and uneven. Then, in a voice so low I barely caught it, he whispered, "Not tonight. Please, not tonight." A cold sweat broke across my forehead. My father wasn't warning something. He was begging it. The rest of the night passed in silence, but I didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I imagined something crouched behind that basement door, its ear pressed to the wood, waiting. The next morning, I stumbled into the kitchen, exhausted, my eyes burning from lack of sleep. My father was already there, sitting at the table with a mug of coffee, staring at nothing. The newspaper lay in front of him, unopened. I sat down across from him. "Dad?" I started carefully. "We need to talk about the basement." He didn't look up. "Eat your breakfast." I heard it again. I pressed. It wasn't just knocking. It had said my name. His hands tightened around the mug. His knuckles went pale. "Daniel." His voice was flat, but his eyes finally met mine, sharp as glass. "You are not to go near that door. Do you understand me? Not at night. Not in the morning. Not ever. Don't ask me again." Anger flared in my chest. "You can't just keep saying that. There's something down there. What is it? A person? An animal? What the hell are you hiding from me?" His chair scraped harshly against the floor as he stood up. For a moment, I thought he might actually shout. But instead, he leaned forward, his face inches from mine, his voice trembling with something I couldn't place. Fear, rage, maybe both. "You think you're ready for the truth," he hissed. "But you're not. You've never been." And just like that, he turned and left the kitchen, leaving me sitting there with my untouched plate and my racing thoughts. I sat in silence, listening to the hum of the old refrigerator, the faint creak of the house around me. For the first time in my life, I realized something terrifying. My father wasn't just protecting me from what was in the basement. He was protecting the basement from me. By the third night, my nerves were shredded. I couldn't focus on reading, couldn't concentrate on anything. Every creak of the old house made my stomach twist. It was like the basement wasn't just part of the house anymore. It was alive, pulsing, waiting for me to slip. That evening, Dad barely spoke. He sat in his chair by the fireplace, staring into the flames. The glass of whiskey in his hand trembled slightly, though he tried to hide it. I sat across the room, pretending to read, but really I just studied him. His face was pale, sunken, his eyes bloodshot. He looked older than I remembered, older than he had any right to look. "Dad?" I asked softly. "What's really down there?" His jaw clenched. He didn't answer. He just shook his head once, slow, like a man who'd already buried too many truths. The firelight flickered against his face, and for a moment he didn't look like my father at all. He looked like a prisoner. When he went to bed early, I knew I wouldn't sleep. The hours crawled by, each tick of the clock pounding into my skull. My phone screen glared back at me, 11:59. When the clock struck 12, the silence shattered. Knock. 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 The sound was louder this time, sharper, like something angry. The floorboards under my bed seemed to vibrate with each impact. I sat up, my breath catching in my throat. I told myself not to go, not to move. But something inside me, curiosity, defiance, maybe madness, dragged me out of bed. My legs felt heavy, like I was walking through water. The hallway stretched before me, shadows twisting along the wallpaper. I could hear the faint hum of the refrigerator downstairs, the wind moaning outside, but all of it was drowned out by that knocking. And then I heard it. "Daniel." The voice was clearer now. It wasn't just muffled behind the wood. It was sharp, almost close enough to feel hot breath against my ear. My skin crawled. Every childhood memory of the basement came rushing back. The nights I thought I heard scratching from beneath the floor, the time Mom pulled me away from the door when I swore I heard someone laughing down there. The way she always turned up the radio at night, her hands shaking just slightly. I reached the top of the staircase, and I froze. My father's door was cracked open, a sliver of darkness inside. I could hear his breathing, uneven, ragged. He was awake. He was listening, too. But he didn't move. He wasn't coming to stop it this time. So I kept going. Each step moaned under my weight. The smell grew stronger the closer I got to the basement door. Damp wood, mildew, and something else. Something metallic, sharp, like rust or blood. A faint draft seeped through the cracks, icy against my bare skin. The door stood before me, trembling with each knock. Dust shook loose from the frame. The brass knob rattled violently, as if whatever was on the other side was testing it, pushing it. I stopped only a foot away, staring at the knob. My heart hammered so hard I could barely breathe. My fingers twitched at my sides. I wanted to run. I wanted to scream. But another part of me, darker, stronger, wanted to know. What if it was my grandfather? What if it was some secret my family had buried down there, locked away in the dark? "Daniel," the voice whispered again. Softer now, almost tender. "Open the door." The sound coiled through me like a drug. My hand lifted slowly, almost against my will, fingers reaching for the cold brass knob. The metal was freezing when I touched it, so cold it burned my skin. I gasped, but I didn't pull away. I twisted, just a little. Behind me, a floorboard creaked. "Step away." The voice wasn't from the door this time. It was behind me. My father's voice. I spun around. He was at the bottom of the staircase, his face pale, his eyes wide and wild. He looked terrified, more terrified than I'd ever seen him. "Don't touch it," he growled, his voice shaking. "Not unless you want it to touch you back." For a long moment, the house was silent except for the pounding of my own heart. Then the knocking stopped. But the voice didn't fade. It was still there, whispering my name. Only now, I wasn't hearing it with my ears. I was hearing it inside my head. The morning after that night, I felt hollow. My body moved, but it didn't feel like mine anymore. I could barely taste the coffee I poured. My hands shook when I lifted the cup, and for the first time in years, I noticed how old the kitchen looked. The faded wallpaper, the chipped counter, the way the fridge hummed like a heartbeat I couldn't shut off. My father sat at the table, hunched over, his hands wrapped tight around his mug. He hadn't shaved, and the stubble across his face made him look even more tired, more worn down. His eyes were fixed on the table, not on me. I cleared my throat. "Dad," my voice was weak, cracked. "It's in my head now. Do you understand? Even now, I can hear it. Whispering my name." His shoulders twitched, but he didn't look up. He muttered, "I told you not to touch it." I barely did. I snapped. My voice echoed too loudly in the silent kitchen. I didn't even open the door. I just touched the knob. That's all. And now I can't get it out of my head. What the hell is it? What's down there? Finally, his eyes lifted to mine. They were bloodshot, ringed with purple shadows, and full of something I didn't want to recognize, fear. "You shouldn't have come back," he whispered. His voice broke on the last word. "You were safe while you were gone." The words cut me open. My jaw clenched, anger burning through the fear. "Safe from what?" I demanded, slamming my hands on the table so hard the cups rattled. "A ghost? A monster? Safe from your secrets?" He flinched. For a second, I thought I saw tears well in his eyes, but he blinked them away. His lips trembled as he pressed his hands together, almost like he was praying. "It's not a ghost," he said finally, his voice raw. "It's not dead." The room tilted around me. I gripped the edge of the table until my knuckles went white. "Then what is it?" I whispered. But he only shook his head. "You're not ready. You'll never be ready." Silence swallowed the kitchen. The old clock ticked on the wall. My father stared back down at his coffee as if it could save him, while my chest heaved with every shallow breath. The rest of the day was torture. I tried everything to keep myself distracted. Washed the dishes, swept the porch, even turned on the TV. But the voice never stopped. It slithered inside my mind like smoke, curling into every thought. Sometimes it whispered my name. Sometimes it laughed. Sometimes it promised things, warmth, answers, peace, if I would just open the door. At one point, I went outside, desperate for air. The yard looked the same as always, the old oak tree creaking in the breeze, the shed leaning against time. But the voice followed me. Even under the open sky, it was there, whispering just behind my ear. By evening, I felt like I was losing my grip on reality. I sat across from my father in the living room, the fire flickering between us. His face was a stone mask, blank and silent. I couldn't take it anymore. "Tell me the truth," I said, my voice trembling but loud. "I deserve to know. I can't live like this." For a long time, he didn't answer. He just stared into the flames, his glass of whiskey untouched in his hand. The silence stretched until I thought I would scream. "Tell me," I shouted, slamming my fist on the arm of the chair. "I hear it all day. I hear it right now. What is in that basement?" His head dropped into his hands. His shoulders shook with the weight of something I couldn't see. Finally, in a voice so broken it barely sounded like him, he said, "It's blood, Daniel. Our blood. That's why it knows your name." The words echoed in my skull. My mouth went dry, my heart hammering against my ribs. Before I could speak, before I could even process what he meant, the sound began again. Knock. 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 The frames on the wall rattled. The flames in the fireplace shrank and flickered as if a draft swept through the room. And the voice was no longer faint, no longer a whisper. It thundered inside my skull, urgent, commanding. "Daniel, open the door. Open it now." I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. I sat on the edge of my bed with my head in my hands, staring at the hallway beyond the cracked door. My heart beat so loud it felt like the entire house could hear it. The voice had never left me. It was with me while I brushed my teeth, while I tried to close my eyes, even while I sat in silence. But it had changed. It was no longer just whispering my name. It was bargaining. Asterisk, "Daniel, you deserve to know. You deserve answers. He kept everything from you. I won't. All you have to do is open the door, asterisk." By midnight, my nerves were shaking apart. I knew the knocking would come. I could almost feel it before it began, like pressure building in the air, like thunder before a storm. And then it came. Knock. 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 Each blow rattled the walls. The glass of water on my nightstand trembled, ripples spreading across its surface. I tried to tell myself not to move, but my body was already up, already walking down the hallway. It was like my legs didn't belong to me anymore. The stairs groaned beneath my weight. I clutched the railing, my fingers slick with sweat. The smell hit me halfway down. Damp earth, mildew, and something sharper, metallic, that stung the back of my throat. The basement door stood at the end of the hall, shuddering under the blows. Dust shook loose from the ceiling with each knock. The knob twisted violently, rattling as though the door itself was alive, fighting to be opened. The voice thundered inside me. Asterisk, "Daniel, don't listen to him. He lied your whole life. I'm your blood. I am what you are." Asterisk. I staggered forward, my hand hovering just inches from the brass knob. My palm ached with the memory of how cold it felt the last time, how it burned like ice. Behind me, the floorboards creaked. "Daniel, stop." My father's voice. Weak, hoarse, but sharp as a blade. I spun around. He was standing at the bottom of the stairs, his face pale, sweat shining across his brow. His hands shook, not with age but with fear. "You don't know what you're doing," he said, his voice cracking. "If you open that door, it won't stop with you. It will never stop." I shook my head, tears stinging my eyes. "Then tell me what it is. Stop hiding. You think I can live like this? With that voice in my head every second? I can't, Dad. I need the truth." He took one step closer, his hands raised like he was approaching a wild animal. "The truth will destroy you," he whispered. "It's not a ghost. It's not a person. It's hunger, Daniel. Hunger that wears the shape of our blood. Your grandfather fed it, and now it wants you." The words knocked the breath out of me. I stumbled back, my hand brushing the doorframe. The wood was warm now, warm like flesh. The voice coiled tighter inside me, sweet and venomous. Asterisk, he's lying. He's always lied. He's kept you in the dark your entire life. I am family. I am you. Open the door, Daniel, and you'll finally be free. Asterisk. My father lunged forward, grabbing my wrist before I could reach the knob. His grip was iron, desperate. "Don't listen," he cried. "Every word it says is poison. You open that door, and you won't be my son anymore." For a moment, we stood locked together, me trembling, him holding on for dear life, while the house shook around us. The door bulged outward, the wood splintering with each pounding blow. "Daniel!" The voice screamed inside my head now, so loud I thought my skull would split. Asterisk. "I've waited your whole life. You belong to me." Asterisk. My father's eyes filled with tears. "Run," he begged. "Run before it's too late." The knob twisted under both our hands, spinning violently, as if something massive on the other side was forcing it. The frame cracked, dust pouring from the ceiling. And then, silence. The knocking stopped. The voice fell quiet. The entire house held its breath. My father slumped against the door, his forehead pressed to the wood, his chest heaving. I staggered back up the stairs, my body shaking so hard I thought my legs would collapse beneath me. For one moment, I thought it was over. That maybe, somehow, we had stopped it. But then I felt it. A warmth blooming in my chest, spreading like fire through my veins. My father's voice was faint, distant, as he whispered prayers against the door. And beneath it all, inside my skull, a new whisper rose. Not loud, not urgent, just calm, patient. Asterisk. "Next time, Daniel. Next time, you won't resist." Asterisk. The basement door creaked softly behind me, and in that moment I knew it wasn't over. It would never be over. And the worst part? Somewhere deep inside, a part of me didn't want it to be.